You're listening to the Not for Clicks podcast.
Just reel it in.
My mum was taking this personally. I just gave an opinion.
You can't just character assassinate someone in the media like he has. It's an absolute disgrace.
It's like someone saying you got a really ugly girlfriend, but all they've got at home is their right hand and the internet. Do you know what I'm saying?
What's happening, people? This is the Not for Clicks podcast. We talk about football. We talk about sport. We're not here to be nice. We're not here to be horrible. We're just here to give our honest opinions. I'm Jordan. He's Marvin. He's Ollie. And he is G. Gentlemen, how are we? Keep it brief, please.
I'm not bad, Jude. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. I'm very well.
I thought I'd jump in there because last time G said a load of crap. So I thought if I get in there early, then we're not going to have a bad start.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Shooting straight from the hip already.
Yeah, it's a fair point, though. It's a fair point. Oh, you well?
I'm good, yeah. Yeah, not bad. I just, I thought about watching a bit of AFCON today, but I saw it was Burkina Faso versus Mauritania, and I just realised that even I can't represent for something like that.
Hang on, before we get to AFCON, we were talking also later in the pod for those that want to kind of get a bit nostalgic with the golden years of Serie, and also we'll be going through the documentary, The Edge of Everything, Ronnie O'Sullivan, snooker player. So those into snooker, O'Sullivan, or documentaries, hold tight for that. Before we get into AFCON chat, I think we want to have a brief chat. There was a Not for Clicks podcast on the weekend, Spurs v United or United v Spurs. And I think it's only right we kind of get the two supporters of those two clubs' views on the game. Before I come to you and Marvin, G, let's start with you, the neutral here. Is it just me, or for a game that had 4 goals in it, was the game a little bit meh?
Yeah, I do have to put some emphasis on United for that, and Marvel would like it, but I just kind of felt they played a little bit like an away side at home. I guess you could say it's smart tactics of the way that Spurs play generally, but it just came off a little bit cowardly. Like I felt both of their goals felt a little against the run of play. I never felt United were fully in control. And that's why, even though I guess United were ahead both times, you'd say that Spurs could probably feel a little bit unlucky not to kind of come away with all of the points.
Marv, fair assessment?
Like the Chelsea fan telling me that we're cowardly and we did, like, just shut up, G. Shut up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I wasn't even shooting. That's my honest opinion.
I was rubbing my hands because Tottenham's one of the very few teams that play a high line. So I totally get why they'd want to do on the counter because we've got nothing else. You know what I mean? We've got nothing else. So let's see if we can just get people behind a high line, right? So it's not about cowardly. There was a tactic there. And then last but no means least, who the hell is G to come to my door about how a football team plays? Like, who is he? Last pod we were watching Middlesbrough, he was giving it the big one. They got packed out, right? And G was right. The one thing I'll say about G, he was right. I was watching. They were dog. They were terrible. And then he comes and goes, oh, a bit cowardly, blah, blah. We packed you out as well, G. We packed you out as well. So just reel it in.
I've got to say,
I was taking this personally. I just gave an opinion.
Hang on, before I come to you, Ollie, I've got to say, G, the fact that you lost to United this season means that you have to really temper any criticism that you have against United this year, because they are awful and they beat you.
Well, I might as well just leave the pod then.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know what it is, George? It's like someone saying you got a really ugly girlfriend, but all they've got at home is their right hand and the internet. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hey, some girlfriends I'd rather have the internet too.
Like, you might as well have gone to O first, because O's got skin in the game. For him to sit there and tell me that my team was cowardly, right? Ridiculous. You knew what you were doing.
Were they cowardly?
I think they were cowardly. They're at home. This is the point I was making. This is the point that Marv got so upset about. United were cowardly. It was disgusting to see United, basically circling the wagons and saying, we're not going to come forward. We're just going to wait for you to make a mistake. That's just, to me, I just think that is just for a team of Man United stature, for a team that considers themselves as one of the top sides in this country, and I know they're not going through a good spell at the moment, but still, it's Man United. They're at home. To come out, to walk out of their tunnel, to come onto their pitch, and then play like, seriously, I expect Everton to play like that under Sean Dyche. I wouldn't expect Man United to play that. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace to watch Man United playing like that. And I never said for a moment that Spurs should have won 10-0 or whatever. Marv's got completely the wrong end of the stick. I never said Spurs should have won the game. I said, given the fact that Spurs were the only team trying to play, they should have won that game. And United, they shouldn't have got caught out by 2 goals that I thought could have been avoided. Yes, when Rashford and Højlund got their chances, they took them well. But that's not the point, Marv. The point was Spurs allowed you to get into a position where you could score those goals. That was what I was trying to say.
Yeah, for a team not playing well, I think we're in the bottom 5 for goals scored. We scored 2 goals, and I think we could have won it at the death as well, right? Like, I think a draw is fair. I'm not saying United should have rumped it, but there's this narrative that's annoying where it's like, against Tottenham, they played really poorly. Like, United have been playing poorly all season. We've got no structure. Like, Tottenham were just the next kink in the road for a team that's really out of sorts. So don't make this about Tottenham being unlucky. Just make it as United just scrimping and clawing to try and get to the end of the season.
Believe me, I'm not saying Tottenham were unlucky. They weren't unlucky because they gave away 2 stupid goals. You said you should have won the game. Goals. We should have won the game, but they gave away 2 stupid goals. So if you give away 2 stupid goals, do you deserve to win the game? What I'm saying is, given the balance of the play, look, you shouldn't be conceding a goal in the first 3 minutes. That's the first thing. You shouldn't then be conceding to Rashford's goal when you've dominated the game and you've just fought your way back in to get back to 1-1. That shouldn't be happening. Spurs concede too many soft goals. That's my point.
No, but I'm going to assume, Ollie, that the fan base, and look, we're going into kind of football fans podcast territory here now, so we'll just keep it brief here, but I'm going to assume the Spurs fans are getting excited because they're looking at it like, yes, United are in the mess, right? United have not been good all season at home, but to get a 2-2 draw, which is what I think they at least deserved, without their best 3 attackers, first choice midfield, that looks quite comforting, albeit against weak opposition. I understand they're not playing much, but do you not kind of share the sentiment that it's looking, if you can do that at Old Trafford with that team, imagine when all your players come back.
George, can I interrupt here for a second? Are we just going to ignore the fact that United have been missing players all season? Because this narrative of other injuries...
No, I don't care about that, Marv. No one cares about that. No,
I care because he's saying you were missing some...
The thing is, no one cares about you missing players, Marv. Why can you can't say that when we had how many players out who were either injured or playing in the AFCON or playing in the Asia Cup? We've got loads of players away who aren't available. That's not an excuse.
You've got about 5 starters out, and we've got about 3 starters out. Big whoop. Do you know what I'm saying?
Who are your 3 starters, Marv?
Shaw. Yeah. Why are you screwing up your face?
Who?
You're going, like he's not a starter.
No, I said, yeah. Who else?
Martinez, who came off the bench.
Yeah.
And Casemiro.
Marvin, they're missing Son, Maddison, and who's the third attacker that wasn't there? There was a third attacker. Kulusevski. Plus there's first choice midfield. That's a big difference.
Plus Basuma and Sarr.
And what you're talking about is, Ollie, you're unlucky. Like, United have been unlucky all season, but the narrative that you and other fans are like, United are terrible.
Do you rate Shaw, Marvin?
Shaw is probably, if not in the top 3 most important players we have at Man United. Guaranteed. And any Man United fan that says, yeah, of course I rate him. I rate him over any player you got, G. I'll take him over any player you've got.
Chelsea at the bar. Chelsea's not the bar. Forget Chelsea. Do you rate him?
He's asking me, do I rate him? I've just said he's a top 3 player. Of course I rate him. Don't try and put words in my mouth. But do you rate him? Like, I'm swerving the question. Yes, the answer is yes, I rate him. I rate him.
Marvin's triggered.
I'm triggered because you, a Chelsea fan, is coming to my door like you're sitting top
relax,
of the league.
relax,
but do you rate him? Let me tell you what I didn't rate when we were linked with Cucurella as cover. That was embarrassing. Yeah. George, go to O, man. Go to O.
Relax. Relax. You know what? Let's move on.
Just quickly, George, to your point before we move on. It's becoming a thing for Spurs now where it's not just about Man United. You've got to look at the fact that we've been to three of last season's top four now. Yeah,
Arsenal, City.
We've drawn all three of those games: City, Arsenal, and United the other day.
You've also lost 5 on the bounce.
Yeah, there are points at which you can look at all of those games and say we could have won that. We could have won that. You can't keep saying, "Oh well, we could have won that. We could have won that." Walking away and saying, "Well, if only." We didn't give away soft goals. We're giving away soft goals in these games every time. That's my point. It's not really about United. It's about the fact that we give away soft goals.
I hear you. All right, let's move on to...
More reason why United were shook and they should have put it on them.
All right, we know what you're doing now. We know what you're doing. Just relax. It's a long pod. Also, let's move on now to AFCON. Ollie mentioned it earlier on. Have you guys been watching it? And more importantly, have you guys been enjoying it? Because I think most tournaments, the first week is often a bit meh. I think meh is being quite kind, but am I being a bit harsh? G, you start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try and put the positive spin because I know you guys are gonna go in. So no, it hasn't. It's been a really slow start. In fact, it's been a poor start. I guess my highlights have been Cape Verde's last minute winner against Ghana. Just for the Ghana-Nigeria rivalry there. Also, I enjoyed Algeria's first half performance, but then they kind of fell apart. I think the only team that has really performed to kind of standards has been Senegal, and Lamine Camara, that's a contender for the goal of the tournament already. But generally speaking, no, it's been quite slow. But I'll wait for the pylon. I'll let the other guys kind of come in and tell you how bad it's been.
Let me go to you, Ollie, next then, because I've watched most games, not all games, admittedly. I just think some of the goalkeeping to start with, it's so bad. And I've watched the games I've seen. It's not only goals that have been conceded, but just goals that haven't gone in. But I'm just like, bro, what are you doing? I've seen some good goals scored. To be fair, but I've also seen some shockers go in. Again, am I just being a bit negative?
Well, it's not just the goalkeeping, is it? It's long been spoken about that the defending from the African sides isn't great as well, and you have to admit it's true. Some of the defending is really bad, but yeah, it's just the games just aren't what I would love to see. And I think I remember saying this at the same point with the last African nations tournament, that it would just be so much better if you had really strong or leagues that were developing in Africa and they found their own way of playing. Because I just feel that there's so many of the AFCON nations who are playing a kind of a really dour European style. And it doesn't, that's not how you develop your game. All of these managers
they're not playing to their strengths.
They're not playing to their strengths. Chris Hughton's the manager of Ghana. And I love Chrissy Hughton. He's an ex-Spurs man and I got a lot of love for him. But at the same time, Ghana kind of need to have their own guy there. They need to, look what Senegal are doing with their own guy running the show. I know they've got good players and stuff, but I think that's what we need to see from AFCON. I would love to see African nations with strong leads. I looked through the squads the other day, actually, and one of the only nations I think has got a lot of their players playing in their own country is Egypt. When you get past Egypt, most of the players are playing in Europe and all around the world. And I think until, we see more AFCON nations playing, with the players, at the very least, starting out playing in Africa in decent leagues, then we're not going to see an AFCON that you get a sense of these nations that have got their own style. What we've got at the moment is something that is like a really dour version of the Euros, where most teams are playing a certain style, and it's not very interesting. To be honest, I'm sorry, but I'd love to represent, but it's just not. It's not for me.
I think what you're saying, Ollie, is true, and the development about the leagues is something that's long overdue. But I think even when AFCON was like at its best, like in the late 80s, early 90s, there were still no leagues there. But I think it was like kind of like what made the AFCON exciting was kind of like the naivety of the teams, right? So everything was like attacking. People were really expressive, like the Whatchas, the Adebelés of this world. And I think, like, in an attempt to try to be, like you said, more European or more structured, they've kind of lost a little bit of that, and it's become a little bit more boring and regimental. It's kind of like a worse version of the Nations League at the moment, if that makes sense. But we'll see how it gets when it gets to knockouts and teams get a little bit more desperate.
Apart from Ghana's shock defeat, the big story at AFCON has been Andre Onana, who flew out in a private jet after his 2-2 draw with United to Ivory Coast, to find out that the reports came out today that he's not been included in the squad. And there's a video that's gone viral where you can see him having to be calmed down by Diouf about not being included in the squad. I don't know. I want to hear your take, Marv, but I think he's been mad disrespectful to the whole tournament, in my opinion. I know G's got some thoughts on it as well, but as a United fan, do you see any responsibility on him leaving late with United, or is this solely on Andre Onana?
I mean, ultimately, George, I wanted him to go sooner, right? Right? We got like a Turkish goalkeeper, and I've heard he's half decent in training. And no one can tell me that Onana's like got me 10 extra points this season. In fact, I'd argue Onana not got me out of Europe before Christmas, right? So I wanted him to go sooner, and that's no disrespect to Onana. But if you look at it just out,
it's no disrespect.
It's no disrespect. You couldn't be more disrespectful.
On a personal level, right? That's a man that's yet to prove his value to Manchester United fans. So you can understand him trying to get maximum minutes because he wants to keep the person that I want to see out of the team. And we've only got 1 or 2 other games in this month, right? So I'm not angry at him for trying to cling on to his position because, like me, I think other Man United fans are keen to see if we've got something else that can give us a better performance.
No, but Marv, sorry to cut you there, but surely if this other keeper keeps 2 or 3 clean sheets in the time that he's away, he ain't going to stay in goal. Onana's spot he's not been good. I agree.
It depends how well he does, George. It depends how well he does, and it depends how long Onana's really away, how far they get in the competition. Like, I don't like to answer your question. I digress a little bit, but to answer your question, I think if Onana's going to come to Man United and say, "Look, I can stay a bit longer. I've spoken to the team, and I can stay a bit longer," United's not going to go, "No, go." Like, put some respect on the AFCON's name. I don't think an African person's ever even worked in the back office at United, so I can't blame United for that. It's an Onana decision, and let's be honest. When Onana signed, he had retired from international football.
Marv, come on. They asked him to stay.
They asked him to stay, 100%.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, but even if they did, Ollie, I don't put the blame on United at all. I think this is on Onana. If you're Onana, you want to represent your country at your continent's premier football tournament. Why is what Man United saying stopping you from doing that? I know he's got a beef with the management because of tactics and stuff. I get that. But either you want to be there or you don't. To rock up, the tournament started 4 or 5 days ago, Ollie.
No, it's not just that, Joe. It's not just that, but the rest of the squads have been training for the last couple of weeks. It's not like you just rock up for. It's not like you just rock up for the tournament the day it starts. You've got to go off to the training camp first.
Can we just make sure we're on the same page, right? When United signed Onana had no intention of going to the AFCON. Onana had retired from international football. So I think because he's decided to go back, he might have said, look, I know you thought I wasn't going. I'm going to go later. Like, I think he's done it, and United haven't forced him to go. I at the moment, I've seen no evidence to suggest that United have asked him to stay.
So hold on.
I reckon United.
Hold on. Let me get it straight. So he retired from international football, and whose decision was it for him to come back?
They recalled him. They must have had a conversation, and he decided he'd play for them again. But that's nothing to do with United, right?
Right. So he made a call to come back into it. Right. They asked him to come back. He didn't say to them, "Listen, actually, I want to play."
Well, there was an agreement. They probably asked him. As Marv said, there's probably a discussion. They came to an agreement, and then from there, cool, I'll play for you again.
Right, okay. So he's made a call to say, I'll play for you again. You can't then turn around and say, I'll play for you again, but actually, I'm just going to play for my club until the day before your first game in the AFCON.
Well, this is why I blame him and not United.
On the same day.
That's nonsense, Marv. You can't do that. You're either in or you're not in. You can't be have half a foot in and you're like...
Hold on, why are you coming to my door? His question was whether it's a Manchester United decision. Yeah. I've said no. Was it an Onana decision? Yes. Was it disrespectful of Onana? Yes. Do I give a damn? No. I wanted him to go. So what's the problem?
So let's get some clarity here. Ollie and G, I thought your position was you were blaming United for him going late.
Okay,
whereas me and Marvin are saying,
I can't believe for a moment that United didn't ask him to stay. Yeah,
even if they did, though. But even if they did,
but I guess the point is, George, he's primarily responsible. I don't think anyone would deny that. But United even asking that question has a level of disrespect for the tournament. You can't see that,
and for international football generally.
100%.
And let's be honest, United have form with this.
Yeah.
So, right back to Ferguson. They don't have any respect for it. It's just like...
You're thinking of Ryan Giggs, aren't you?
This is just... 100%. I think so, yeah. And, it's just that thing of, this is Man United. Man United's more important. What's more important to you, Man United or playing for your country? And I think
I can't lie.
That's fair.
I can't lie. I was saying that gave me goosebumps. Like
I have to say to you that they got form with that, Jord. And I just think that Man United would have said, and I can imagine Ten Hag went to him and said, "Listen, I'm fucked here. I'm in real trouble. Andre, I'm in real trouble here. Sorry for my language, yeah, but I need your help, yeah. I need to get through the next few games, yeah. The new guys come into town. I need to get through the next few games. I need you here. Don't let me down, yeah. I brought you to this club. Don't let me down.
Jaden's already let me down. I need you.
that's what's been said. You know that. This guy's fighting for his life at Man United.
Let's keep it moving. I want to just personally shout out, first of all, 3 guys that I work with, friends of mine that have gone out to AFCON to cover it for British and African outlets, Miles, Tony, and Kweku. They do a platform called Content Club. So go check it out on Instagram. They're doing some great work. They're getting good interviews with some people out there as well. To big them.
You want to shout them out? I feel sorry for them.
Shut up, man. I'm just giving them a little big up. They're doing some good work out there.
No, they deserve the big up, right. But I'm sure they'd like to see some good football as well, Jordan. And at the moment, I don't think they're seeing it. Yeah.
True that. All right. Let's get on to now on our next topic, guys. Let's talk about a documentary because on this podcast we'll be looking at films, documentaries, maybe a book. Akin to different types of sports. And we agreed we were going to start off with the documentary The Edge of Everything, which is a documentary on the snooker player Ronnie O'Sullivan, 7-time world champion. And I'll get to in a second, but someone that's heralded as one of Britain's greatest ever sports people. Marv, let me start with you. What did you make of the documentary? And what did you learn from the doc? I don't know how much you knew about O'Sullivan before the documentary, but what did you make of it?
So, George, when I was younger, my dad watched a lot of snooker, right? And the John Parrott, the Steve Davis, the Higgins of this world. And I was a big fan. I was like a fan of Ronnie O'Sullivan because when I was watching it, he was a bit younger than the rest of them. And actually, the documentary, I can't lie to you, at first, I thought, what have I signed up for here, right? I was thinking, A, this is really depressing. And B, not that entertaining. It just seemed like a man fighting his demons in the darkness, right? But actually, as it went on, I think it really humanized and brought to life the fact, like the mental anguish that a lot of these sports people are going through. And I actually quite enjoyed it by the end of it.
What did you make of the documentary?
I actually thought it was a good insight into his mindset. I mean, but at the same time, it's amazing how he's kind of prepared throughout the documentary to kind of to put away some of the players on the circuit that he's playing against in some respects. I was impressed with it. I mean, there are some similarities because it's made by David Beckham's company, isn't it? So there's some similarities that I saw with that and the Beckham doc in the way that they've gone about it. But I liked it from the beginning, really. I thought that it was interesting when you know that Ronnie's story is kind of so sort of the main thing about his backstory is about his dad being, put away and in the prison. And I think that comes across of how much that affected him. But I don't think that's the only reason that he kind of is the way he is. I think he's generally that way entirely. His dad kind of alludes to that as well. That even when he's winning, there's something, he kind of feels like there's something missing. So, yeah, but I do think that there's kind of a real interest in the fact that this is what players or, people at the top of their game like him, and it reminds me of someone like Djokovic as well in the tennis, where, a lot of people have issues with him or think that he's kind of a bit too abrasive. And I think that O'Sullivan has the same sort of, they're complex characters basically. And I think that part of their makeup is that they need to have this thing where they kind of set themselves apart from everyone else, which gives them the edge to become the champions that they are. And I think that came across well in the course of the documentary.
Agree, G?
I honestly, it was a tough watch for me. Didn't really enjoy it.
Gee, this is where you say that you can do a 1-4-7.
No. I want to be really clear. Actually, snooker is a sport that I respect, and I've played it at a pretty low level, and I was bad, so I respect it. It's a good sport.
Is snooker a sport?
Yeah, I think it is a sport.
Gee, is it the fact that anything that you haven't played you don't respect?
And when you say low, hang on. When you say low level as well, do you just mean in the pub with your mates?
Yeah,
you're talking like about semi-pro or something.
That's not a low level. That's no level.
I don't know. I was quite good, but yeah, I respect snooker. I respect pool. So there's no problems. It's not throwing pins into a wall. It's a sport. Yeah. So that's there. But
so on that point, G, I'll stick with you. So in the documentary, I forget which contributor, which guest says it, but he talks about snooker being like obviously a sport and rating it, and talk about the art of snooker, and it's about mathematics and angles. And when you talk about it and think about it in those terms, is that what makes you recognize it as a sport? It's not just putting balls in a hole. It is about angles, and it is about maths.
Absolutely, definitely. And there is an element of strategy to it as well, in terms of like, when you put certain balls down. And I think there is just like you're out there for a long time as well. Like it takes a lot of concentration. So the mental side of it, I think, is very underrated. So yeah, I definitely do think it is a sport. And yeah,
you know what I think with snooker, one of the hardest parts of any sport is in snooker, where when you've hit, we've all played snooker. I don't know, out when we're out
at a low level,
yeah, and at a low level, yeah. And there's nothing worse than when you've hit a bad shot, and then you're watching the next person cleaning up cleaning up the table. And I watch those guys, and they're watching, and we're talking, as you say, G, we're playing at a low level. But watching those guys, when you're seeing someone clean up the table, hitting 100 break or something, and you're seeing the game slip away or a frame slip away, and I think that must be one of the hardest things mentally to deal with, that you can't affect the game. In football, you know, even if you're having a bad game, you can put a tackle in, you can do something. But when you're actually sitting there and someone's making a break and they've really got their claws into you, it must be the hardest thing to just sit there and watch it. There's times where I think if a game's really slipping away from you, or a match is really slipping away from you, the temptation to just walk out of the auditorium and just think, I'm done. This is.
But Ronnie's done that, right?
He did that, yeah. Sod this.
The thing is, it did definitely humanize it for me. Not snooker or Ronnie, but just the fact that I, in particular, just look at people. He made a comment like, when he's getting old, people go, he's lost it, he's finished. I've definitely been that person where I feel like I don't talk about sports people as sports people. They're more things, right? Oh, he's 35, he must be done. And it made me quite self-reflective of, like, mental health is real for everyone, but a sports person, sometimes I've been like, well, they can be mentally ill with millions of pounds in the bank. You know what I mean? Get over it. Like, other people got proper problems, but it doesn't matter where you are in life, how successful you are, those demons will follow you. So that was what my takeaway. Now, George, please don't say anything about Dele Alli's interview, because he did that last time, right? And then the last point that they glossed over, right, was like his dad was blatantly a criminal, right? Like,
yes, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that.
It wasn't like he just got into a pub dust-up and inadvertently killed someone. Like, that person was affiliated with the craze. He had a load of sex shops in Soho. They made it seem like, oh, unlucky, he killed someone by accident.
Yes,
this
100%.
guy was clearly a criminal.
100%.
And that it was just because it was Ronnie's thing. He opened the doors. They didn't want to go too hard on that bit of his life, right?
I agree. Gabriel, and I'll ask all three of you this. In the documentary, Stephen Hendry, who some regard as the greatest player, many think O'Sullivan, but some are Team Hendry, he says that the final, I think it was a Masters, maybe 15 years ago, where O'Sullivan beat him and he got a 147. I think with his left hand as well. He says that he thinks that is the hardest thing to do in any sport. Do you agree?
Now we're gonna get into
because I laughed at it at first, G, and then I don't think it is. But when I really thought about it, that is really, really, really hard to do. That's not like a simple thing to do.
So a 147 on your weaker hand is no, it's not the hardest thing to do. It's not the hardest. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's not. Sorry, Stephen.
Well, it's I can't understand, G, why you're not kind of. I mean, that's pretty incredible that he can play equally as well with both hands.
Yeah.
I mean,
but the hardest thing to do in any sport,
to hit a 147.
It's up there. It's up there.
The hardest thing to do in any sport.
He cleared the whole table, G. It doesn't happen that often.
I don't want to see the bad guy again, so I'm going to leave it there.
It's not about being the bad guy, but when Hendry's saying it, obviously one of the best to ever do it, being in the sport, he has no foresight of other hard things to do in other sports, right? Like he's in it. He knows how difficult it is for him to do it, and he's one of the best that ever did it, right? But I actually just don't think sports are comparable. Like snooker, individual man sitting down, playing another, not man, but person, and a team winning the World Cup who only were in it because, you know, they're Greece, for instance. Like there's different ways to look at it, but I respect it. In fact, I thought it was weird that Ronnie O'Sullivan would do it with his weaker hand. I thought that was a bit disrespectful, to be honest. Like try and win it with your best hand, mate. There's a tournament at stake. But overall, I think that's one of the points of the doc that I like, George, that he had quite a range of people, right? From Damien Hirst to Hendry. I think he had one of the Rolling Stones.
Ronnie Wood.
Yeah, Ronnie Wood. That was interesting. I'd have loved to have seen his family a bit more. Like you saw a bit of his significant other who was trying to like have a conversation with him.
Didn't you think that was interesting, though, Marv, that so much of it was him on his own? I mean, it's a lonely existence, isn't it? You know, just going and doing these tournaments.
The production where he was lying down and like on a pillow, like, you know, when it was just like, it generally was like him and his thoughts sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, I thought it was mildly interesting. No, I'm just being honest. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't think it was as bad as you think it was. G, it was a decent watch.
I mean,
yeah.
If I had to give it, because the thing is, it was like, it's like 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
But
or hour and a half.
Like, I kind of felt like to go to any type of depth, you would have to have gone longer. But I was already at pains that how long it was already. It's like, I just didn't like, for something that was supposed to be so, so introspective, I felt he could have gone a lot deeper, like, you know, the lads have mentioned already, like with his family and stuff. But overall, and maybe this kind of goes back to the kind of the Dele Alli discussions, I was hoping for a sports documentary. I didn't want another therapy session. And maybe that's kind of where I didn't enjoy it. That's
fair.
And for my perspective, I similar to Marv, I used to watch snooker for a little while when I was younger and kind of fell out of it around the time that when he was rising. So I really wanted to know about his story, how he rose. Maybe like a few like tournaments, like quarterfinal here, semi-final here, the build-up, in the way that like the Jordan documentary did, for instance. But I just kind of felt like it was like, he got to a final, he won it, he's holding the trophy, and the next minute he's lying down in the dark room and he's upset again.
Finally and briefly, Ollie, again, he's mentioned in the documentary, he's one of the greatest athletes of this country's produced. Would you have him in the top 5 British sportsmen of all time?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if we are calling it a sport, then yeah, he's up there. I think he's. I mean, I have to admit, I'm a big Ronnie fan. I think he's box office. And watching the Masters at the weekend, it was incredible watching him. Well, not just him. I've got to give Ali Carter some kind of respect as well. I thought that whereas before, when we all grew up watching snooker, a frame of snooker could go on for ages. You know what I mean? You could go on for a long time. These guys were just going through these frames like it was quick. You know what I mean? It was like, these frames didn't take any time at all. And normally the game was finished or the frame was finished with one visit from one or the other player. They were finishing it in one visit. And then when it got closer and closer to the end, then you saw them making more mistakes, getting a bit nervy, and it would take a couple of visits to the table before someone got full control of the frame. But certainly watching the game now, and Ronnie O'Sullivan has been, what you're looking for with any sport is how someone kind of takes a sport and bends it to the way that they play and bends it into, you know, a version of what they've done. And that's certainly what he's done with snooker. Snooker is a much better game for having Ronnie O'Sullivan because he's made it more exciting. He's made it a sport that isn't, you know, that you don't have the sort of guys in it anymore who are just going to take ages to take one shot. And yeah, so I think he's well up there as one of the top sportsmen we got in this country.
Okay, let's give it a rating, guys. We're going to give it a rating out of 5. And I'm going to come up with 3 criteria of which you judge this documentary. We'll do it for all docs that we judge, and then we'll come to a consensus as a team. The 3 categories are going to be engagement. So how engaged in the documentary were you? From a technical production point of view, so how it was shot, how it was edited, you know, all those sorts of things from a technical point of view. And I guess the 3rd category would be, would you watch it again? 6 months, 2 years, whenever, but would you watch it? Would you go back and watch it again? Start with you, Gabriel.
Oh man,
out of 5.
based on those questions, like, because I definitely wouldn't watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Did I think it was? Did I think it was technically well done? I'd give that about a 2 out of 5. And what was the 3rd question? Sorry.
Engagement. So how engaged were you in the documentary? Whether it was funny, whether it was you learned something, whether the person carried it well. How engaged were you?
I'm just going to give it a 2 out of 5 overall.
Overall, 2 out of 5.
Yeah, for
Okay.
those three, making us the 3 points.
Wow, 2 out of 5. So I would say that I would watch it again. Actually, there's little bits of it that I kind of would like to kind of mull over a bit more. Actually, so yeah, I would say I'd watch it again. So yeah, I'd probably give that. So is it 4? I've got to give a mark for whoever I'd see.
No,
again,
just one mark out of 5, but based on those 3 criteria.
All right, I see. So okay, I would say I would give it. Yeah, I'd give it a 3.5. Can I give it a half?
We don't do halves. No halves.
3 then. 3.
No,
I give it 3.
Okay.
3 out of 5.
All right. See, one rating away, not that much difference.
No, but it's out of 5. So actually, between 3 and 4 is quite a difference. 2 and 3 is a big difference. I'll give it a 3 as well. I'd give it a 3 as well. I wouldn't be rushing back to watch it again, but I thought as a documentary, I thought it was well produced, and I was pretty much engaged throughout the whole documentary. So I'll give it a 3. We'll get Marvin's rating when he sorts his bloody internet out. So what's that on average then? Out of the 3 of us, what's that?
Looks like a 3.
Is that a 3? I think that's a 3 out of 5 for the documentary. And I really want to know if anybody listening or watching this, any recommendations for sports documentaries that we should be checking out, we should be watching. Let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know on our Instagram or Twitter page as well. We'll try and get a list together of documentaries to watch. Okay, let's keep it moving now. Let's talk about the glory years of Serie A. Let's have some fun. With Italian football at its finest. Right, to do this, I want to take back some of our younger listeners to the golden era of Sundays. When on a Sunday morning in my household, I was woken up to the smell of plantain, breadfruit, bit of beans, bit of soul, reggae, funk music. Had to come down for breakfast, do my chores, had to hoover the whole house, stairs included. And then once you finished the chores, you then heard the omnibus of EastEnders coming on. Remember EastEnders, omnibus? For those who don't know, that was when they showed all 3 episodes of the week in one sitting on a Sunday. That would finish about 3 o'clock. No, man, it's like 20 years ago it stopped that, Ollie, man. Not to why, but even I know that. Get to 3 o'clock, and you know what time it is. You turn on Channel 4. Go! Big time theme tune. Tell him G. Iconic. Man like Jimmy Richardson in his little white suit, legs crossed, posh little latte in one hand, newspaper in the other hand, outside a fancy bar in Rome. And you knew what time it was, man. Piacenza versus Inter. Napoli versus Foggia. What are they called? Not Foggia. What are they called? Yeah, Foggia. Foggia, yeah. Big games, man. The golden era of Italian football. So I thought let's have a little bit of fun and kind of revisit that. And what I want to start off by asking you, G, is we're talking like 95, 96. You're saying maybe just me, that decade to 2005. Do you think it's fair to say that was, of our lifetimes, the best era of football? Superstar players, competitive, teams doing it in Europe, big boy managers. Or am I just being a bit too nostalgic there?
No, I agree with you. Maybe there is a little bit of nostalgia. Obviously, my first World Cup that I watched properly was 94. Watched a little bit of Italian 90s. So that's kind of really when I was, just despite popular belief, that's when I really started going.
Some would question that, but we'll move on.
So that was really when I really started getting into football. But I also think football in that era was more about expression and technical ability. It wasn't so much about athleticism, which it is now. So you could have someone like Georgie Hadji, who was maybe a little bit overweight, but because he had the technique,
a little bit.
I'm trying to be nice, But because he had the technique, he could play. And I think I just remember whether it was the World Cup, whether it was watching Serie A, it just felt like any team I watched had at least one player that I'd want to watch. And if I compare that to now, there were a lot of teams who I couldn't give a damn if I never watched them again. You know what I mean? Like every team had at least one player who could do something special. And yeah, so for me, that is definitely my favorite era of football.
And Oli, I know you're a little bit older than us, so you may definitely kind of question whether that was the best golden period of any league in Europe. But as G says there, one of the things that I loved about the Scudetto and the Serie A in those years was that not every team, but the majority of teams all had a player you wanted to watch. And just going through some of the players I was writing down earlier on, Signori, Baggio, Pagliuca, Lombardo, Ronaldo, Salas, Veron, Cannavaro, Batistuta, Crespo, Inzaghi, Mancini, Zidane, Ferrara, Boksic, Nedved. Like it just seemed like the league was just littered with players that if they weren't world class, they were like one tier down from world class. What are your memories of that kind of decade in particular and Serie A?
You're forgetting Del Piero and Zidane.
Listen, I could have filled. I said to Dan, I could have filled four books, Ollie. So I just were a flavour of some of the superstar players from that era.
But yeah, you know, I think that it was certainly a great moment in terms of watching football, because at that time, especially when it started, I think it started kind of the season that Paul Gascoigne went to Lazio,
World Cup,
and so you know, it was Italian football, Serie A at that time was the dominant league in Europe, and everyone who was anyone was playing there. All the top managers were there as well. Although they had a fair amount of Italian managers, which is kind of different from what we see in the Premier League these days. They had a lot of managers from you know, homegrown managers. But yeah, no, it was a great league, and it was great to watch. And because the Prem came on stream and Sky took over that, and a lot of people got kind of disenfranchised at that time. I think a lot of people gravitated towards Football Italia to watch that because, you know, it was their weekly hit of live football. And so, you know, a lot of people became Italian football fans instead of watching the Prem and had to get by on watching highlights. But yeah, that Juventus team of the mid-90s with Ravanelli and
crazy
Vialli and Del Piero and Baggio for a time as well. And as I say, Zidane and Edgar Davids, Didier Deschamps. I mean, that was fantastic. Yeah, Conte. All of those guys were great. And they, you know, they had some real battles as well. I remember, you know, when I was watching it, some real battles when, as you mentioned, Ronaldo, the real Ronaldo, was at Inter. And then there was that kind of, I remember that controversy that season where they didn't, you know, there were a couple of dodgy decisions in the game between Inter and Juve at Juve's ground. When Juve went on to win the title. But yeah, there were some really, really big battles between them. And, you know, even at the beginning, you saw the sort of fag end of that great Milan team as well, with Van Basten and Rijkaard and Hullet. I think Hullet might have moved on by then, but you still had Van Basten there. But, you know, he kind of started to get hampered by injuries. But certainly,
I just missed that. I came in just
that early,
after that.
Yeah, in that early part, it was kind of you Van Basten was still there, and then Sacchi moved on, and then Capello took over, and then that team was brilliant as well because, you know, he took over and turned them into a different beast. But they were a great side, AC Milan, you know, in the early '90s under Capello. You know, Simone up front. I remember they had him up front. They still had that defence as well. With Baresi and Maldini and Costa Curta. It was a fantastic team. So yeah, you know, it was great times to watch, you know, and it really did give you a sense of not just watching the games, but James Richardson was just so good in terms of kind of giving you a bit of the history of different clubs and different parts of Italy, and really kind of giving you a sense of the culture, not just about the football, but the culture of the country and how they kind of watched and viewed football. It was a brilliant time, actually. And it's sad because I don't think we've ever had anything like that ever since, because James Richardson's style, where it was kind of, he was kind of doing it with a nod and a wink, and it was funny. It was kind of, it was irreverent. It wasn't just watching football and just giving you the information. It was kind of giving you it with a smile and telling you stuff in a way that made you laugh and gave you something to remember after the game had been and gone. So, I think that was a great time to watch football, and unfortunately, it's never been repeated.
No, I'll come to you now, Marvin, as well. But one of the things I loved about Serie A in those years as well was that it felt like it was really competitive in terms of there were 4 or 5 teams could win the league. There were maybe 10 teams that could finish in European spots. And just going back to G's earlier point, 15 of the 20 teams had a player that I wanted to watch. Even the lower teams had someone that was like, yeah, let's check him out. I don't know if you had an Italian team, because in my school, we all had an Italian team as well as our English team. Mine was Sampdoria. What did you have Italian team?
Oh yeah, mine was Inter with my team because of R9. I loved them, and I think that's why I'm so negative about football today, George. Because those days, like when you were reminiscing about the EastEnders omnibus, and the beauty of it is we didn't all have Sky that young, so to get free TV on Channel 4 was pretty serious. And Inter were the nearly team. Juve were like the dominant one, and they finally got over the line. So I loved Inter, and as a result, I had to hate AC. Like I had to. Like that was just part of the run-ins, although I respected them. And I always liked, who was it? Boban for Milan. I thought he was like a beautiful player. But between R9 and the workhorse of like Zanetti, Aron Vinta, Recoba came in a bit later, like that was my team. And I think you're right. I think now football's all systems and structure rather than individual characters that got you excited. Like, I don't think I get excited about footballers individually as much anymore. And maybe it's just like people will tell me, I'm sure. I think it's just my age. I love the fact that you said I was a bit older. Come on, it's significant. It's significant. And I know he'll remember a lot more than me, but yeah, that was my favorite era. And I think what's interesting, Jules, what you said is there wasn't actually as many European spots to go around back then. So good people missed out, but it was UEFA, which was good fun as well. Yeah. But Inter was my team. R9 was my guy. He still is my guy. That's how I judge you as a football fan. If I say who's the best player of all time, and you say Ronaldo or Messi, it means you weren't about in the glory days, as far as I'm concerned. Do you know what I mean? I
hear it. And
do you think that was it? Do you think that was sorry, George? I just wanted to ask. Do you think that was his best period, Ronaldo at Inter?
No, I don't think it was his best period, but it was my biggest connection with him because I was so into the Italian football. Does that make sense? So him at La Liga, Real Madrid, or before that at Barca, I didn't see as much as him, but I tuned in. Like if Inter was the game of choice, I tuned in to see him. And he had those flip-flap moves in the UEFA Cup final and stuff like that. That was my connection with him. I think he had like more successful eras, but that was me and him back then.
I'll never forget the episode of Football Italia where James was on, and he didn't break the news, but he was talking about the fact that Ronaldo was supposed to go to Lazio. People forget that a deal was done to go to Lazio, and Lazio they fumbled the bag at the last minute, and then Inter came in and stole. And I just remember being really excited about, because I didn't know much about Ronaldo at that point, because I didn't really watch the Spanish league at them times, so I didn't really know much about this guy, and the internet wasn't a big thing for me then. Couldn't afford it. So him coming to it wasn't about, fair enough, yeah. So just the kind of little things that Ollie talks about with the way that James Richardson presented that program. And it wasn't just football. This was Super Sunday for me before Super Sunday. It wasn't just football. It was so much more than, like I said, Fiorentina versus Roma. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it was perfect. Wherever they went, they would always find a nice little cafe in there, talk about the history of the area and stuff like that, and then go through all of the players. And It was educational from a purely holistic perspective. Can I give one episode that I didn't like though? It was when Gaza joined Lazio. That whole weekend just became, it was like player cam before player cam existed. I remember the commentator being like, come on, Gaza, show us what you can do. I was like, oh my goodness, I've never said Aside from that, it was perfection.
It was sick. It was sick. I mean, we might do one on La Liga as well, because I think La Liga's got a definite claim to, for our generation as well, claim to be, the best decade of, because there was some big players that were passing through La Liga in the late 90s and definitely through the noughties as well. Let's move on. We've got a couple more to get through. Let's talk about a couple of players very briefly that made the news this week. Let's start with Sancho. Gabriel, Jadon Sancho, a hype or just walked into a bit of a shit show?
I feel like a hype. What the numbers that at youth level he did exceptionally well, and the numbers that he put up at Dortmund were great as well. But we've seen people go to the German league and put great numbers up and not been able to come and reproduce those over in Europe. I also just don't get the big discord. For me, I think if your manager says you're not performing in training, that's a subjective opinion. I can't see how your manager saying you're not performing in training has got to this stage. And Marv is probably going to disagree with me, but from the outside looking in, and Marv will know more details, it looks like he's been indulged quite a bit, and he's never performed for United. So to be indulged to that level, and then to get one call out, which is an opinion in my opinion, it's not the worst opinion. I mean, compared to what Troy Deeney said, it's absolutely a minor. Just to say, I think he's not performed in training, and to come to all of this, I think he has to take a look at himself.
Marv, he's still a player at your club. Do you think he was done dirty, or do you think he just needs to take more responsibility for his failings?
So for me, George, it's less about Sancho as a player, right? I admit fully that Sancho has not performed for Manchester United, and he has been a bit of a disappointment in regards to what I thought he would bring to the team. I thought he'd be perfect for the team. I got it wrong. It hasn't worked out. I guess ultimately my bigger issue is the fact that particularly Manchester United fans have lapped up the media agenda that this guy has terrible timekeeping, terrible trainer, and, Haag, showing his authority. Haag started the season poorly after everyone thought that we'd have a good season after finishing fourth last season. And I think Haag has picked a scapegoat in Jadon Sancho. And I hear Man United fans constantly going, Haag cared, he sent him away to Holland and train and all of that stuff. We don't know that Jadon Sancho wanted that. What we might think, I might hazard a guess and say he didn't, but he kept his head down and did as he was told and didn't come out and say anything. This whole narrative of, get your head down and keep trekking on is what people should do. And people are already giving me the examples of Maguire kept his head down, Wan-Bissaka kept his head down and got back into the squad. They got back into the squad because Man United had serious gaps that they needed to fill, right? You're telling me if we had fully fit centre-backs, whether Maguire got back into the squad because he got his head down. The narrative of Jadon Sancho stinks, right? The media has concocted or have made sure we've heard every intricate detail of how badly this person trains. And there's also this narrative that Manchester United have this excellent training regime. It's definitely not carrying across to the pitch. And I'm just not having it. I wish him the best of luck. I hope he does really well at Dortmund. I'm hoping he waits Haag out and comes back and lights it up. Even if he doesn't, as long as Haag goes, I'm happy. But I just want people to just take a second and realize that everything that we've seen and heard about Jadon Sancho has been force-fed by the media. And let's also not forget that Man United hired a load of journalists to run their PR engine who have done a blinder to the fact that we have loaned out a £375,000 a week investment to Dortmund. He gets straight back into Champions League football. He seems happy there. And I think we need to, Man United fans in particular, just need to admit that there's a level of toxicity in the club. And Jadon Sancho has been the main person that's really had to deal with that toxic environment that we're currently in.
Yeah. The
All
thing
right,
with
cool.
your theory, Marv, is a lot of it is reading between the lines, like the assumption that he didn't want to go.
Well,
on
no,
that
G,
trip
I'm not saying that I'm right, but what I'm saying is the club have said his head wasn't right, he needed to get away, and he went and got away. And as a result, people are going that the club cares about Jayden so much, and we've tried to look after his mental health. If Jayden was that weak mentally, G, would Haag then say he's a terrible trainer and leave him out of the squad? Or would Haag have covered for him and made up an injury, something that clubs do all the time? And the other narrative that just really gets to me is like people say he didn't just slag him off. He was asked a question. You're telling me that question wasn't a plant? You're telling me there wasn't bigger things to worry about? The fact that Man United went to Arsenal and got packed out? I'm not having it. And you're right. I am reading between the lines because I don't think the lines have been fair for a long time.
All right, Marvin, big up. Thank you for that now. Let's stick with you, Marvin. What time is it now, Marv?
Yeah, George, our new segment. What you talking about, Willis?
All right.
And if you don't get the reference, you don't get the reference. But we're going to talk about a certain thing that one of us have said this week, and we're going to give out the Willis of the week, right? So it might be something funny. It might be something outlandish. It might be something ridiculous. But what you talking about? So that's the section.
Okay, so talk us through, Marv. What's the Willis of the week that you picked out for us this week?
The Willis of the week has to be Troy Deeney this week.
So for those that haven't heard, Troy Deeney, he has his first managerial job at Forest Green Rovers. Really happy for him. I've met Troy a few times, interviewed him a couple of times. I like him. I think he comes across quite well. So Troy Deeney, he lost one of his first games now the weekend to Harrogate, and he basically called out the whole team. Wasn't having it. Wasn't happy with how they performed. He was quoted as calling them as babies. There's too many babies in the squad. And he's dug out one of his players, Fankati Darbo, for what he said was a really, really, really poor performance. He's gone in, done an interview with what I believe was the in-house press team post-match, and he just battered him. He's quoted as saying that he felt that Darbo had a chance of going to the Premier League a few months ago, whereas now he wouldn't even get a kick for a team in the current league that they're playing in. And it's been criticised because he's been very public, very vocal, very scathing. He did say he'd spoken to the player in front of the team before he'd gone public. And he has since apologised, not for what he said, but for going public. But I'm assuming, Marvin, that you're not having this approach in managing. It's a very old school style of managing from a very new school.
Do you know
manager.
what, Jude? I took this approach on Football Manager and Championship Manager all the time, and I got sacked all the time. Right? My players lost faith in me, and they did. This reminds me of what's the whole manager that sat him down on the pitch that time? What was it? Phil something. Was it Phil something?
Oh, what was his name?
Phil Brown.
Phil Brown.
Yeah. What I think Troy thinks he can do is treat people how he was treated. The game has changed. And I just think it was such a bad call so early on into his managerial career. He did try and pull it back and say he was running rings around them before, but I just thought, just pick your words better and just be more respectful. You can say that a player hasn't played great, but he was like, he's been off it for 6-7 weeks. It was just a utter assassination for no reason.
Yeah, he's battered him. G, Ollie, start with you, G. Do you have any thoughts about whether, he may feel comfortable in the point that I'm comfortable here, they've brought me in. If you're gonna bring me in, this is how I manage, deal with it or not? Or do you agree with Marvin that it's a ticking time bomb to getting sacked if you approach your criticism in this way?
It's definitely a ticking time bomb. And the thing that I didn't like about it the most was that someone asked him the question, like, hey, like, do you think it's advisable to be calling out your players like this? And he goes, well, the fans are calling me out, so therefore I can call out the players. And I just thought, you don't do it for that. If you're going to call someone out, you really want to call them out because they're not doing well, not to kind of take the heat off your own back. And that's what it kind of came off. And especially for a guy who kind of it's one of his most famous lines is about people having cojones. Like, have the cojones to come out and own the fact that you lost and you're responsible as the manager, rather than pick out this poor guy.
He did say that though. He did say, I'm the manager, I take responsibility. But is he not within his rights then to say individual players that performed?
I think when you talk so much about one individual player, you can say, well, yeah, it's my responsibility, I'm the manager, but blah 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 about this player. It doesn't sit right. I like Troy as well, and I hope he does well, but I don't think he's come off well in this exchange at all.
Finally, Ollie, the quote was, he has not been good enough for 8 or 9 weeks. Why do you think he was dropped at the start? I've just told him in front of everyone 6 months ago that kid had a kick to go to the Premier League. Now he would not get a game in the National League. So is it me or is it him? He's faster than everyone, but he gets run every game. He never makes a tackle, and every time the ball comes to him, he looks like he's kicked it with his shin pads.
That was funny.
That was a bit funny, yeah.
I thought the fact that he was Premier League ready was a bit strong as well. Maybe Championship, but not Premier League ready.
Oh, what's your thoughts?
It's so outrageous that I can't understand how he thinks that is in any way okay. I mean, I started a new gig recently, and they sat me down pretty early on, and they made me do one of these online courses about bullying and harassment. Yeah, you can't, and all of the stuff that I watched on this online thing, yeah, was basically what Troy Deeney's just done. It's just incredible. It's incredible that he thinks. Well, I've just looked on the BBC website, right, to see he's basically come out and apologised. Yeah, he said, my emotions can get the better of it. His emotions get the better of him. Really, Troy? It's like, he's just said, I don't apologise for what I said, just I apologise that it was said in public. You're not quite getting this, are you, Troy? It's just...
It's like I'm sorry. I'm sorry everyone else heard it, but I meant it.
I mean, how on earth does he think that he's going to get the respect of those players in the dressing room after this? It's incredible, really. I mean, honestly, the guy, I don't know what I assume he's done his badges and all the rest of it, but it's not just about doing your badges, is it? You need to be able to deal with people. You need to be able to manage people. And that is a skill. It's not just about doing badges. You can't just character assassinate someone in the media like he has. It's an absolute disgrace. And let's be clear about this as well. If this was a white manager and he'd said that about a black player, we would all be looking at it and thinking, what's going on there? Do you know what I mean? We would want to know what is going on. He shouldn't be singling out a black guy like that for criticism in the media. I just think that is, honestly, I can't believe that he thinks that is in any way okay. And to come out and apologise and say, well, it's all right, I just shouldn't have done it in the public sphere. No, Troy, no, you shouldn't be doing it at all.
Just to conclude, so for me, my thinking was, how bad could he have been? Like, how... He's talking like the guy gave 4 own goals, got sent off, 2 penalties. Like, how bad could the guy have been? But listen, he's apologised, like you said.
And he's been off. If he's been off it for weeks, why have you been picking him every time?
Yeah, there's that as well. Listen, Marv, G, it was fun. Let's do it again. Same time next week. Check us out across all the socials, Instagram, Twitter. We're also on YouTube. Give us a follow if you want. Spread the word if you want. If you don't want to do it, it's all good as well. We'll see you next week. Peace.